As most of you know, today's session is on customer service. It is, I think, kind of always a hot topic in libraries because there's always things that we can do better. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to share some philosophies and stories from for-profit companies known for customer service, and then together we're going to brainstorm ways to provide similar service in our libraries. So as we go through, we want you to share your thoughts and ideas and kind of considerations as we move forward. That said, some of the companies that we're talking about, you yourself may have had a bad experience with, but we kind of did a little bit of searching for companies that were sort of known for good customer service. And as we go through, there's kind of no right or wrong answers. So hopefully that will work for everybody. Let's see here. So we talked a little bit about bad customer service that we have all experienced as customers, because I think it's always good to put ourselves in our patrons' shoes. And we chatted a little bit about that. So as you guys were thinking about the customer service, the bad service that you have experienced, how did that make you feel? In the main chat area, kind of in the bottom left, if you could just share with me, like, what feelings you had, were you frustrated, angry, those kinds of things. When you're not treated well, how does that make you feel? Fixed. Oh, fixed in terms of the audio. Sorry, Carol. Frustrated, disappointed, helpless. I like that, especially, if somebody needs to do something for you that you can't do yourself, you're sort of stuck. You don't want to go back. Feel taken for granted, angry, discriminated against. Tend not to go back and use their service. Yeah, I'm a big one about that. If you make me angry too many times, I'm kind of done with you. Furious, yes. Incredulous, yeah. Like I think I mentioned earlier, sort of like sometimes when you're actually trying to like pay for something and there's an issue, you're like, but don't you want my money? Sad for the employee that's providing the service. Ooh, invisible. That's a good one. Revenge. Nancy, good for you. You won't get my money. Tina's taken high road. She's going to try to give kind and respectful feedback, but share her thoughts. Angry about time wasted, sometimes offended. Yeah, these are all really great. And so obviously we're going to not spend the whole time talking about bad customer service, because we want to talk about delighting our customers. But it's good to kind of put yourself in our patrons' shoes. It makes us feel invisible. It makes us feel unheard. It makes us feel angry, and we're going to provide feedback. We're going to go on TripAdvisor or on their website, and we're going to complain to let them know, which is good. So now I want you to think about the best customer service that you have ever experienced. And I think we'll just go ahead and use this same chat area off to the left. When you receive really good customer service, how does that make you feel? Impressed? Special, yes. Respected, appreciated, valued, like we're being paid attention to. Oh, grateful, that's a good one. Thankful and happy to come back. Yes, and we thank the person that is giving it to us. It makes us feel happy. Like, have you ever gone in somewhere where you've kind of been either in a bad mood or just sort of a blah mood, and you get really good customer service, and like you're like whistling back to the car? Like, they can change your day. Yeah, you admire the person and the company. You feel important. These are great. Sometimes surprised. It would be nice if we weren't surprised at good customer service, wouldn't it? Makes you feel like a friend rather than a customer. Appreciative. Yeah, like we're in good hands. You feel you can trust that person a little bit. So these are great. So one of the things that we're going to talk about before we start sharing the stories is the word delight. When Kieran and I put this presentation together, we chose the word delight for a reason. So I have the definitions of delight on the screen there. Strong feeling of happiness, great pleasure or satisfaction, or something that makes you very happy or gives you great pleasure or satisfaction. And the main reason that we chose the word delight is that in my opinion, and you guys can feel free to disagree with me, it is a very powerful word. I think it invokes powerful connotations. But if you look at the definition, all we're talking about is making people happy or satisfied. And to me, that's also very doable. Does that sound like something that's doable to you all? Is that a definition that you guys can work with? All right. Yes. Okay. Excellent. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about how companies are trying to delight their patrons, and we're going to do a lot of chatting amongst ourselves about how we can bring that same level of service to our libraries. So first up,
So there was this blog that talked. This woman, a mom of a special needs kid, often talks about uh, her experiences. And she went into Trader Joe's, and it was one of those evenings where, she knew her kid wasn't having the best day, but you have to get groceries. You got to, there's sometimes you just have to get stuff done. So she went in, and he was bouncing off the walls, and he careened into an employee, and she, kind of talk to her kid about, like how you have to watch out and pay attention to your body and all these things. And then he goes off and he does it again, creans into another employee. And she's apologizing to the employee. And he's like, oh, it's okay. Like, we're always dodging around customers and, like that. And she says, yeah, like it's a dance party. You have to like keep dodging out of everybody's way. And the employee said, yeah, it's like a dance party. And he called over another employee, and they started dancing. And first of all, it's just the two of employees just sort of like bringing down the house in the middle of the frozen food aisle. And the kid's just sort of watching because that's not normal adult behavior. And the kid was just kind of like, yeah. They took a little, like, 30 seconds to a minute, and the kid started dancing too. And right there in the middle of the frozen food aisle, they're cheering him on. They're telling him, like, bust a move. They're coming up with all these ways where he fits in and he's happy. And it's okay for the mom to be there and she doesn't have to worry about, her kid upsetting everything. And it's just like a fun, positive reinforcement for being at the store. And the kid will always remember being able to dance at the grocery store.
all right, so that is kind of an excellent story, making kind of what could be a rough situation, embarrassing the mom and that kind of thing, a little bit more fun. So we're going to bring up a little poll for you really quickly.
And
And we want you to,
Trader
I'm sorry, go
Joe's
ahead, Karen.
Trader Joe's their mission, their core values. One of them is to have fun with customers. I believe the
Excellent. So that makes a good point and is a nice segue into the poll that I've pulled up on the screen about, does your library have a core set of values that can help direct you to make or to provide excellent customer service? And it could be part of your mission statement or something like that. So you can go ahead and take that poll here. All right. And it looks like most of you have responded, and that a good majority of you, your library does have some core values or something that sort of has a level of service that is set pretty high. And Nancy mentioned that she herself doesn't work in a library, but Jefferson County in Colorado must because they offer superb customer service. So there's a nice plug for Jefferson County. So for those of you who said that they do, you can put in the chat area maybe what some of those values are. And once again, you can paraphrase. You don't have to type in your whole mission statement. Or if you yourself, just as a person, kind of have a value that might speak to excellent customer service. That the patron comes first. Yeah, so when you're working on other things, making eye contact and smiling, walk to the resource and don't just point. Excellent. Yeah, basically we're there to provide a service. That's kind of like why we have the job. Service before tasks. That's a nice way of putting it. Making them feel welcomed. No with a yes attitude. That is great. And that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So keep that in mind. And I like what Lisa's talking about in terms of taking a holistic look at the customer, um, because sometimes it's easy to try to like, we might pigeonhole people, or maybe it just becomes about their question versus sort of like the entire person, treating everybody equally. Ooh, patron walks away feeling that a need that they didn't know they had was met.
That's a nice
Excellent. Yeah, I like that. Listening and responsiveness. Yep. Yep, get down lower if you're talking to a child so that you're not speaking down to them. Empathy is huge, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today too. These are great. So it looks like we all have a pretty good starting place in terms of support from our organizations for providing really good customer service. Yeah, talking through what you're doing. Yeah, because libraries can be sort of mysterious places for some people, and they ask a question and we start typing away on our computers, and they're just sort of like, I don't know what's going on. Yep, these are all excellent. Okay, so we are going to go to, and feel free to continue adding in the main chat area if you like, but we're going to go ahead and continue on with our next story.
And as I share this next story, we're going to bring up another chat window, and it's going to be
Right.
right in the middle of the screen there. And while I'm talking, just start thinking about and sharing the biggest problem you've ever solved for a patron. And it's not necessarily like that they came in and complained, but that just that the interaction that you solved the problem and wowed the customer, right? And I want to make sure you have plenty of time to type these. So please feel free to type while I'm talking. So I have a friend who works for Zappos, and Zappos is a company that their first mission is to provide good customer service. Oh, and they also sell things. And he started in the uh, call center, and one of his first week as an employee, he got a phone call from this woman who was just really irate. She had ordered a pair of shoes for a big race that she was running on that Saturday, and she had ordered them with the express, shipping, like, and paid the extra money so that they'd get there so that she could have time to wear them for this race. And they weren't there, and they were supposed to be there. And he could check and he could see that they were lost like in the mail, and it was kind of like UPS's problem and not his. But that doesn't solve the problem. So, he talked to her for a while and he was like, just a second. And he went to his manager and he was like, what do I, like, what can I do? And the manager, because this is how Zappos goes, is like, well, what do you think you should do? They want their employees to be empowered to make these kind of things without having to go up the chain. So he says, well, I think we need to really expedite a pair of shoes to her so she can still get them before the race. Because if they mailed them really quick, it could still work. Like she could get another pair. And we should refund the money that she paid for the expedited shipping for the pair that didn't get there. And maybe just get the shoes for free, right? So the manager's like, if that's what you think you should do, if that's what you think will make it better, do it. So he goes back to the phone, tells the lady what they're gonna do. She's kind of like, okay, like, yeah, whatever. Like it was supposed to work last time. Like how do I know it's gonna work this time? But whatever. She finishes the phone call. So that next Monday, he calls her back, and she's like, "Are you calling to see if the shoes got here?" And he said, "No, I'm calling to see how you did in the race." And the shoes had gotten they'd gotten there on time. She was able to use them, and she ran the race with the shoes, and she was excited because they made good on their word. She got the shoes for the race, but it went above and beyond for her that he called not to find out about the shoes, but to find out how she did in the race. Like because he cared about the reason she had ordered the shoes.
So I can see we're getting some really good stories being shared about problems that you're solving for for people. And it just kind of dawned on me while I was just watching people type that almost every time we have an interaction with a patron, we're not, I guess we wouldn't necessarily call all of them problems, but we're helping them complete some sort of task. Whether they need entertainment to bring home, or they need to do research, or some of these other things in terms of signing up for health insurance and helping somebody out who's not feeling well, taking time to help them, write a resume. They're coming in faster than I can even read them. Somebody delivered a birthday cake, so I don't know, that might be the winner. But these are these are really good examples of going above and beyond, but a lot of times we have no idea what impact we're actually having on a patron, because we think we're doing something that's just part of our job, and it completely changes their day. Years ago, and I continue to date myself with my examples, but I worked for the Arapahoe Library District years ago, and when Blockbuster was still open, and for those young people, Blockbuster was where you would go to rent DVDs. Just kidding. And we were constantly getting Blockbuster returns at our branch that really, they belonged to the video store. And on occasion, we would know who it was, and we could call them and let them know. But there was literally a Blockbuster across the street. And so I went over there to check to see, if I wasn't sure even what Blockbuster if they were checked out from, if I could return them there and they'd make it back. And so we kind of had this kind of informal agreement with Blockbuster where I could take the DVDs that were returned at the library, return them to Blockbuster. If a patron ever inquired, I'd be like, yeah, we've already returned it, and that should be fine. So these are some great stories. Helping people with health scares. I mean, sometimes you go to the doctor and the doctor's office is so busy that you can't always get the information you need, or you're kind of stunned when you've gotten some of that information. And I like what Tiffany said in the left-hand chat, that something we don't think about often is, what is my personal service philosophy? Yeah, that's a good point.
I know.
To explain patrons overdrive. Yes.
Explaining overdrive. Okay. Sorry. I was thinking about the yes/no log, and how some libraries, the idea is if you have to say no to somebody, or no to a customer, or no to something that they want to happen, that you write it down, and then later, like in a staff meeting, you can kind of go through what are the things that we're saying no to, and what is stopping us from saying yes. Is it a technology thing? Is it a policy thing? Is it, no, we can't actually cure the diseases we look up online, but keeping that kind of log, and then keeping everything, in line for everything.
And I think it was a retail store that I first heard about a yes/no log, but does anybody who is attending today's session, does your library use something like that, where if you have to say no, you track it and try to figure out ways to say yes? Just sort of curious.
I know there's nothing worse than telling somebody, I can't stop the computer from logging you off in 30 minutes. There's no way I can, let you take this test you need to take that'll be 45 minutes long. Sometimes it's technology that stops us, but sometimes if there's enough reason or customer need, we can fix these things.
Yeah. And while everybody's typing, I'm kind of struck by the breadth of sort of the problems that are being solved. It's everything from, somebody trying to place an item on hold and they keep getting the wrong one, and it's a cataloging error, to, helping somebody out to their car when they've, maybe have too many materials, or they might not be strong enough. Connecting them to other resources. I mean, the library can really be such a connection center. So these are great. Right, and on occasion, as Carolyn has pointed out, sometimes there just is no yes, and we are limited sometimes in the scope of what we're doing, but I think that there are, we'll talk about that kind of coming up to ways to say no that don't sound like you're just cutting them off at the pass. Oh, that's great. The mom said that the public library is the only place that she can bring her children with special needs. Excellent. Yeah, all of the computer help that libraries provide people, because you need You need to be able to use a computer to do just about everything these days, and the assumption is that everybody knows how to do it. So these are great. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to move on to another story here. So in doing research, I happened to read the book Onward by Howard Schultz, and I was struck, of Starbucks fame, and I was struck by this quote: "We listen to the customer, acknowledge their complaint, take action by solving the problem, thank them, and then explain why the problem occurred." So think about that for a moment. There's listening, acknowledgement of the problem, solving the problem, thinking, and then explaining why. Can anybody guess why this quote struck me as being kind of very important and sort of an aha moment? Right, Wendy, one of the Wendy's, we're not sure which one. Yeah, a lot of times, and it's human nature. I mean, honestly, when somebody comes at me and they're frustrated about something, the first thing I want to do is explain why it happened, or maybe even more importantly, why it's not my fault. And so, what Starbucks tries to train their employees, and once again, I've actually been to Starbucks and gotten really good service and also like not so great service, but I think the intent in terms of their headquarters and training is like a lot of times you don't necessarily want to know why, you want to know if it's going to be fixed. And so these steps can kind of help calm a patron down, actually, or you're listening to them, you're validating them, even if they're wrong, like even if they're complaining about something that you have no control over, or they have the idea wrong, or they thought they did something that they didn't. You're listening and you're validating their frustration. And I think that's where sometimes people get stuck, is you feel like if you validate a complaint, you're saying that they're always right, but sometimes you can just validate the frustration. Oh, look at my typo. That's lovely. You tail action. You can take action then by solving the problem, and you work with them to try to figure out how that might work. You thank them, and then if they're curious, you can explain why the problem occurred, but a lot of times you might not even need to get to that point. And a couple of people are saying, yeah, if you explain with the why, it sounds like you're making an excuse. And that's kind of what it is. It's sort of like a gut reaction. So let's think a little bit more about the relationships that we foster with the public that comes in, because relationship building is key. So when you're working with people and you're taking action on stuff, questions that you can ask yourself, or maybe when you're in staff meetings and you're talking about customer service, or maybe an issue that happened, or an incident that occurred, you can think about, will it make our people proud? Will it make the customer service better? And will it enhance our libraries in the minds and hearts of our customers? And kind of that's like a really nice place to start with kind of working with people, especially if they may be upset. And so kind of like going to the defensive of, oh, this isn't my fault, or this is why it happened, doesn't really make the customer service experience better. No, trying to move right into how you can solve the problem might. So we're going to do another quick poll here, because I'm just curious about what you all call your library users. Do you call them patrons? Do you call them customers? Users? Yeah, it looks like a lot of you call them patrons, several customers. And Tamara has a good question. Does this mean internally or externally? And we're going to touch on that in just a moment. We're supposed to call them customers, but I slip and call them patrons sometimes. Yeah. And if you switch from one library district to another and they call them something else, that might be easy to do. And I've seen a bunch of different articles about what you should call them, and this, that, and the other. But the question I really have for you all kind of goes back to what Tamara was talking about, is, do you know why you call them what you call them? And you can type that in the chat area. Oh, Christina, she has a good answer. She calls them by their name. Habit. Split between patrons and customers, users when referring to digital services. Interesting. Right, it's library culture. So a lot of it is by habit. But it might be an interesting conversation to have either with your supervisor or with your fellow colleagues or once again at a staff meeting about like, does anybody know why you call them what you call them? And is what you call them, does that have kind of a direct effect on how you perceive them? So if you call them patrons, is that kind of like patron of the arts and they're kind of like special? Is it customers because the world is full of transactions and we're kind of competing with bookstores and these other things? Users, I've heard, can have some negative connotations because you have drug users and whatnot. I've heard some people say that members sort of sounds like it's kind of elite but welcoming at the same time. So I'm just sort of curious as to, you know, if you know or if your organization even knows why you might choose to call them something, especially like one person mentioned there was a kind of a policy change. They used to be patrons and now they're calling them customers. If there was an explanation as to why that change happened.
Angela has a good point about guests.
Guests, yes. Yes. Patron sounds more personal than customer. Mr. and Mrs., their surnames. Yes, using names is very, very important.
Sometimes you can't
Taxpayers, supporters.
use a personal name, and you need to refer to them either somewhat anonymously or as a group. But yeah, coming from a more rural background in libraries, it's pretty much everybody's knows everybody. I understand that one a lot.
So Lori says that usually customers refers to people that are directly paying for a service. Patrons is more for people supporting a service. Okay, so we have some kind of, and we don't all have to agree. There is not a right or wrong answer, obviously, for this one. But it kind of is good to know maybe why, you know, your organization refers to people in a certain way. Right, it's not a commercial environment. So, as we're continuing to talk about relationships, the next question I have for you, and we're going to have you raise your hand. So, once again, to raise your hand is the little guy in the upper, like leftish middle area. Does your library have a formal feedback process? So, raise your hand if your library has a formal feedback process. For the public, I should specify. And it looks like the majority of you do. Okay, so many of you do. In your opinion, and once again, this is opinion only, do most of your patrons know what that feedback process is? And you can say yes, no in the chat area. Oh, so we're seeing a couple no's coming through. Some people are not sure. There might be multiple ways of feedback. Maybe if they're having a problem with the website, maybe there's a link that they can click on. Probably not. So this might also be sort of a telling thing. And once again, this isn't to call out anybody's organization, but once again, another kind of conversation you might want to have with your organization, with your staff if you're a supervisor or whatnot, about how you can let patrons know how they can give feedback. Is it a form that they need to fill out? Do you let them know that feedback is welcome? Because once again, we're sort of there to serve them. And, you know, there may even be staff that, you know, your library does have a formal feedback option, but you have new staff that might not be aware that it's there. So if a patron comes in, only the angry ones, yeah, we tend to kind of give a little bit more attention to the angry ones. The library district that I used to work at, the Arapahoe Library District, and I think they still have this, was a paper form. They could also provide the same feedback online, but it was a paper form that they could fill out that was postage paid. So it could be good, bad, or otherwise, but you could sort of hand them the card, tell them to fill it out, and they could just pop it in the mail. The postage was already paid, and it would go directly to the director of the library district. And I believe that all of them got some sort of written response back. So it was sort of like a direct line to the director, and it could also be something where they didn't have to hand it to a staff member. So if I had maybe an unpleasant interaction with a patron, I could give, and I did this before. I had somebody who was screaming at me, and before she left, I said, I understand you were unhappy with today's, with the service you got today. I wanted to let you know you could provide some feedback, and she could send in the feedback without having to think that I'm going to go and throw it in the trash or something. So feedback forms on the front desk, an area that invites people to make comments on a web page. So once again, the reason that we're kind of discussing all of this is that it really goes to that relationship building, how you connect with people, how you relate to them, how you respond to them, and then if they know that there are, ways that they can provide feedback. Because I think most of us would much rather get feedback through the library district, especially if they're unhappy, than to find that there is an interview in the newspaper if somebody is unhappy. So these are all great. Great. And I'm going to lower some of the hands that we have raised before we move on here. Okay. So back to our stories. Oh, and I've also found this quote. If you guys can't tell, I love quotes. In the book that I read, when we are fully engaged, we connect with, laugh with, and uplift the lives of our customers, even if just for a few moments. And once again, that kind of goes back to you never really know how the work that you're providing might lift somebody's day, even just for a moment, make them feel a little bit more welcome if they've had a bad day and those kinds of things. And kind of this gets back to why I like working in libraries is, these little moments where you can kind of connect with people. So yeah, you see that at the front desk. Yep. All right. So our next company is one of my favorites, Walt Disney. And if any of you, I'm going to be posting some resources to the CSL in Session website after we're done today that has the books and stuff that we read. But the books that I read about Disney, especially about Walt Disney, were some of the most inspiring to me in terms of customer service. Once again, you could love or hate Disney in terms of sort of how it exists now as sort of this money-making powerhouse. But from what I have read, obviously I never got a chance to meet Walt Disney, but everything that I read speaks to he really did want to create a magical place for children. When he built Walt Disney, the first Disneyland, he actually lived in apartments on the property, and he would walk through every day and take a look at it, and he'd crouch down to see like how did it look from a child's angle and those kinds of things. So he really was, customer service was very important to him, and it wasn't just about making money. So one of the kind of their philosophies is magic is made by optimizing the mundane. And I love this. So does anybody want to guess what the most frequently asked question at any of the Disney resorts or parks is?
And no, it's not, where's the bathroom?
It is not, where's the bathroom? Autographs, that's a good guess. How do you get a job here? That would be great. Yes. I've actually heard they're a really good place to work. Where's Mickey?
Hey, Christine.
So realistically,
Hey, Christine.
huh?
Hey, Christine. When does
Yes.
the 3 o'clock parade start?
Exactly. And Elaine was close, but it's like, and it was a little bit different. So when does the 3 o'clock parade start? Think about that question for a second. Right. It might seem silly because it's the 3 o'clock parade. But what they teach their employees is to look beyond the question, which reminds me about libraries quite a bit. And what they really want to know is when does the 3 o'clock parade go by where they happen to be standing? Because the park is huge. And so, their staff kind of can chuckle about, you're asking me when the 3 o'clock parade starts, but their answer is, it passes by Cinderella's castle at 3:05 or whatever that might be. So I think, it's important to kind of remember that our customers don't know everything that we know, but they do know stuff that we don't. Once again, they know what their point of view is. And so kind of putting ourselves in their shoes can be really helpful. Yeah, do we have any books? tax forms. So you guys are like getting started on what our next little activity will be. So I'm going to pull up another chat window here. Oh, look, I did a test earlier. So in this chat window, type some of the mundane or silly or repetitive questions that you guys receive every day in your libraries. Where's the bathroom? When do you open or close? Are you open? That's always fun. Do you have computers? What about tax forms? When you all have the big sign, how do I log on? Do you work here? Do you have a pencil? The cost of printing, yes, very important. Can I print something? How do you apply for a library card? How to address a postcard? Interesting. Do you need a card to use a computer? So we all get a lot of redundant and sometimes silly questions, where like the sign is literally right over their head and you're like, can't you read this? So years ago, once again, after the time of the internet, but many years ago, when the Arapahoe Library District got the software to allow patrons to log onto the computers themselves, and we usually required a library card or whatnot, I remember in staff meetings, we would have conversations about, how frustrating it was to answer this question over and over again. I didn't become a librarian, I didn't go to library school to show them how to log on to the computer. Well, I was fairly new, not only new to, I was not new to the library, but new to working reference. And I would get so anxious working in the business reference area because I just felt like every question I ever got asked, like I had no idea what the answer was. And so I started actually looking forward to the how do I sign on to the computer questions because it was a question I was guaranteed to know the answer to. So sometimes when somebody asks you some of those silly questions or the ones where you have to like answer them over and over again, think of a way that you can kind of make it fun or, not quite as mundane and silly because once again, it might be a question that you've answered several times, but it's new to them. And once again, they're kind of having that perspective of they don't know how things work in the library and that kind of thing. Also, there has been a lot of research done that kind of asking questions or admitting that you don't know something in a library is actually, it's very intimidating for people. And I'm still kind of reading the chat here, so if I chuckle while I'm talking, that's why. But it can be kind of intimidating to walk into a library and ask somebody new or admit that you don't know something. So, kind of try to remember like the person behind the question, what might they actually really need and that kind of thing. And it can be confusing using, signing onto the computers, using the catalog, trying to do an interlibrary loan, overdrive. Like we have all of these systems in place that we sort of know how to use, although there are days that I can even have trouble with it. And think about how kind of intimidating it can be for the patron. Yeah, placing holds and getting library cards. And yeah, these are great. Is the scholarly. Fake news. Is anybody getting fake news questions? Probably shouldn't have thrown that out there. So as patrons are asking these questions, how can we actually get at the true need? Obviously, if they're asking where the restroom is, my assumption would be they need to use the restroom, so we might not have to delve too deeply into that. But what are some things that we can do to kind of figure out like what they're really trying to get at? Somebody mentioned empathy earlier, and I think that that's kind of a big component of customer service, kind of putting yourself in their shoes. Once again, maybe you've answered a question for the 5th time that day, but to them it's kind of new. Trying to relate to their questions, asking questions, restating their questions.
And Tamara brought up a good
Elaine.
one there about not jumping to conclusions. I know
Yes.
I've been asked, do you have a book about kids? And after many, parts of the reference interview, I realized that they aren't talking about children, they're talking about baby goats.
Right. Right, and Elaine actually brought up the reference interview. So how many of you, and you can raise your hand, how many of you are familiar with the reference interview? It's something that we're typically taught in library school, but obviously not all library staff have been to library school. All right, so we have several. I'm actually going to do a quick scroll because if most of you are, then so it looks like maybe about half. So just really quickly, once again, we have when I post the resources, there will be information about the reference interview, but it kind of ties back a little bit to kind of that relationship building that we talked about with Starbucks. So basically, in a nutshell, the steps of a reference interview are being approachable. So a lot of the stuff that you talked about at the beginning, smiling, nodding, kind of acknowledging that somebody's there, looking for somebody who might look confused, listening to them and being present, so not making those snap decisions or thinking, where am I going to look for this information, but listening to them as they're explaining what they need. Asking open-ended questions, which a couple of you have mentioned, so that you can clarify what they are looking for. So do they mean kids as in children or kids as in goats? Because hopefully those would be two separate books. Answering and speaking clearly with no jargon, and that I have found is really hard in libraries because, the catalog, the ILS, databases, like patrons don't have any idea, unless they're regulars, they've been coming for years, they don't know what any of that stuff is. And then kind of following up to make sure that you literally have, kind of given them what they've needed, they understand maybe what they need to do with that information. You showed them how to help them print an article from a database or help them check out a book or what have you. So that's reference interview in a nutshell, and there are some more resources that we'll make available on the CSL in session website at the end of the session. But it really, once again, kind of speaks to that relationship building and making sure that you're understanding what they mean and that they are understanding what you mean. So kind of going back to their slides, there's another quote from Disney that I would like to share. Our guests may not always be right, but they will always be our guests. Allow them to be wrong with dignity. And this I also found very powerful because, once again, we can get into that, we're doing this all day. And one of the things I meant to mention at the beginning is when we're talking about customer service, everybody who is involved in a service profession, providing customer service all day long is hard. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we could just be cheerful, happy all the time ourselves and not, and therefore just automatically be able to offer exceptional customer service to everybody who walks in the door, but it can be taxing when you have difficult patrons, when the computer system's not working, when you've got 80 billion other things you need to do in addition to working with the public. So I kind of just wanted to clarify that we get how hard customer service is, but this quote I found really kind of powerful because sometimes they are literally wrong, even though there's sort of that old axiom that the customer is always right. Sometimes they are wrong, but we want to allow them to be wrong with dignity. So if we go back and we take a look at some of our silly questions, and as you type in the new chat box, it's not necessarily going to line up with what you said in the other one, but think again about some of those questions that you get over and over and over again. Is there a way that you can make it more fun? Is there something that you can think about or do that will allow you to kind of get past this, oh my God, if I have to talk to somebody about tax forms one more time, I'm just going to scream. Think about ways that you can make magic out of the mundane, and you can put that in the right-hand chat window. So Jennifer is saying that she actually used to work for Universal Studios, and she feels that the training and experiences she got there made her a better, more compassionate listener. Excellent. Yeah, bringing, if those of us who have worked other customer service jobs, I always thought that like restaurants were like the hardest places to do customer service because people were always hungry. But yeah, bringing any and all of that kind of training, keeping a sense of humor is huge. Now, obviously, you don't want to laugh at the customer. I tend to usually laugh at myself if I'm trying to kind of downplay a situation with the customer. Pretend everyone asking for a library card is a 5-year-old getting their first ever library card. Put yourself in their shoes. Smile and keep a positive tone of voice. Every new face is a new interaction. Oh, I like that. And visualize kind of erasing a chalkboard and starting fresh. Yeah. Yes, showing that you're interested in their question. That's excellent. These are great ideas. And it kind of helps recharge. Sound upbeat in your answer. Mm-hmm. No question is a dumb question. So one of the two Wendy's says that if they have a rude or difficult customer, they turn it into a game. Which one of us stays calm and friendly and smiling wins? And honestly, that's kind of the truth. Um, it's hard sometimes not to kind of be pulled into their anger, but it doesn't serve any purpose. So that's great. Yep, be interested. And if you say no nicely enough, it's easier on both of you. Chocolate, yes, for both the patrons and you. Every time you satisfy a customer, you get to eat a chocolate. Yeah, I'm liking the ones that are talking about that it's the first time they're coming to the branch and they know nothing about our policies. Yeah, because we know why we do things, usually, but they don't always know. Yeah, these are all great. All right, well, in the interest of time, I think we're going to go ahead and move forward to our last story. And this one is a doozy. I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. So if I get a little bit choked up, you'll be prepared. So this last story is about Southwest. I've already talked about my love for Southwest, but kind of their motto is to always go the extra mile. And so there was a man who was actually traveling to Denver. His daughter lived in Denver with her son, and he needed to make emergency preparations to come to Denver to see his grandson for the last time. His grandson, I can't remember if he had been hurt or injured, but he was on life support, and he was being taken off so that he could donate his organs. Somehow this came up in the conversation as the man was booking his flight. He was in a hurry. He jumps on the highway, and as luck would have it, he hit traffic. And he gets to the airport, and he knows he's late, and he's just convinced the plane is already gone because he was like 12 minutes past when the flight was supposed to take off. But he ran down the runway anyway. And when he got to the end, he saw the captain waiting for him. And the captain said, "They can't go anywhere without me, and I wasn't going anywhere without you." So, sorry, I told you I was going to get choked up. This story kind of gets me every time because it shows the power that we have in providing customer service to go the extra mile and to do the human thing. So, are there times that we can make exceptions to the rules? So I'm going to bring up another chat window here. And I want you to share a time when you have bent or even broken a rule to do the human thing, to do the right thing. It doesn't have to be as big as what happened with Southwest in terms of holding the plane so that the gentleman could make his flight. Because once again, you never know when the very small things that we do every day can literally turn somebody's life around. Carrying their books to the car, or maybe there's a mom that her kids are just running amok and you kind of, help check her out faster so that she can just get the kids home. Paying for printing when somebody doesn't have enough money. Home deliveries, though that's huge if your library does home deliveries. Giving away paperbacks, to somebody without a card but they have a school assignment. Sleeping, letting somebody sleep even though that's kind of against the policy. Forgiving fines, that seems to be a big one. When I worked at Arapahoe, my kind of thing was every time somebody came in and said, "Oh my gosh, I have a lot of fines. I just had a baby." Like I was young at the time, and didn't have and still don't have kids of my own, but I was just like, oh my Lord, your life just turned completely upside down. The least I can do is waive the fines. And we had the power to do that when we felt that the need dictated it. Help somebody take a test when the computer system wouldn't allow it. Yeah. Yeah, let a homeless person use the computer to find a job. They don't have a card. They can't get a card because they might not have a permanent address because they're without housing. But if they can apply for a job, that totally might change their life. Yeah, Wendy says the rules should never get in the way of the reasons we are here. Hmm. Yeah, waiving fines. I mean, that's literally the easiest thing we can do. Fines are in place so we get our items back, not necessarily to help us make money. And so, but for somebody that can be a big one. I had a woman come in years ago and she came in and she had, I don't know, it was like less than $20. And granted, $20 could be expensive for a lot of people. But she said that she had been homeless for 2 years. She knew she had fines. And so she made herself stay away from the library until she could pay her fines. And my heart just sank because I was like, you needed us the most. We could have worked with you. We could have waived those fines, and you might have had a place to go, to kind of help get you back on your feet. I'm trusting people with a membership when they don't have all the paperwork done. Yeah, like we don't know what their stories are. Somebody may be ill, they have an ill family member. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons for why some of the patrons are being rude. And that doesn't necessarily excuse their behavior, but we just don't ever know what kind of burden somebody else is carrying. Yeah, a car accident and the disc is in the player and you can't, the car is totaled. Like they're not going to be able to get that back. Or maybe somebody had their car broken into and, they had a bunch of DVDs or something in the car. Yeah, these are all great. And once again, this doesn't mean that the library can't work anymore. We're not, you know, making it so that other people can't get what they want. Extra renewals for people, like they get stuck out of town. Hmm. Yeah, these are great. Payment plans, that might be another way. Yeah, another way, especially if they have lost items or things. Excellent. Well, we only have a few minutes left before the end of our session. And so we're going to start wrapping things up a little bit here.
We have a call to action for you.
Sorry, that
Um,
was another story that we didn't have time for.
okay, but before we get to the call to action, we just want to kind of talk about what we've talked about, wrap around and wrap up. So engagement is for everyone. We all have the ability to capture the hearts and minds and souls, not only patrons, but also of our employees, our colleagues, and we can kind of instill this desire and passion for excellence. I know it's changing that culture sometimes in the library is with our coworkers is hard. Sometimes making sure that comes through to the patrons is hard, but we all have the ability to do this and engage people in this. And I want to restate the Zappos philosophy here. Treat everyone like family, even if some of them are the family that you only see on Thanksgiving and you're not sure why they're still in your house. Empower your team. A lot of the things we've talked about are about bending rules, breaking rules, making decisions on the fly, and being and having that person at the circulation desk being that person that has to decide, and letting them have that power. Share everything and have fun. It it's hard to work in customer service. It's hard to be a service professional, and providing that exceptional service is hard work, and we need to acknowledge that.
All
So we
right.
have
Thank you,
this
Kira.
final
Hmm?
activity, and we're going to put a another chat box up here, and we want you to to kind of think about this call to action. Think about what you can do and commit to in the next month. What is it, one thing that you can do to try to delight your patrons?
And I like what Laura has said about giving your coworkers the same excellent customer service as your patrons. And I second that. The more we can rely on and support one another, the easier the work can be. And so treating your coworkers as if they were your customers is an excellent idea. So Robert's going to be busy writing all of their papers.
Hopefully they're not PhD candidates.
Right. Yeah, we're going to see them. We're going to see them as people. We're going to work hard on kind of bringing our best self. Listen closely and not rush. Empathy. Yeah, empathy is a big one for me. Greet them when they come on the floor. Kind of figure out some counter games, like, how something that can kind of help you make it through your day. I like what Stephanie says about putting a smile on everybody's face before they leave. That's a good indication that you've done your job, that you've been able to delight them. Remembering to use their name. Yeah, and remembering them the next time, I think, especially sometimes if you work in a large library and you have just, tons of patrons, that can be a little bit harder, but doing that relationship building is definitely important. So I see a couple other people typing. Surprise them with insight. Yeah, kind of go that extra mile. Give them something that they kind of weren't expecting. Recommending a book or something like that. Saying goodbye when they're leaving. These are all great. Well, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our hour. Before we sign off for today, I first of all want to thank everybody for attending. You guys shared some really great information, and from what I can tell, you guys are doing an excellent job at delighting your patrons. As mentioned, the recording for today's session, as